Hello, I'm Paula from Earth Moves, and we're here in our lovely heated polytunnel. Well, it's not heated, just naturally heated by the sun. It's autumn, so things are kind of dying back a bit, but we are surrounded by hundreds, it seems, of magical pumpkins, which we will harvest for our Halloween celebration, our Samhain celebration. Today I'm really excited to be talking to Nicola Wallbank. She is an incredible young woman doing incredible work for Wirral Council. Nicola is really interested in community engagement and is currently working with Earth Moves to create a gorgeous edible hedge with a variety of species which she has selected due to the conditions of Telegraph Lane, so that humans and animals can help themselves to a bounty of fruit every year. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about how to plant hedges and about hedges from Nicola with this project, and we're asking anyone who lives locally particularly to come and get involved and help us and learn some of the teachings from Dr. Nicola. Nicola has a PhD which focused on trees, and she studied trees from a biological, social and spiritual perspective, which is really fascinating. I'm so glad that someone with that background has got influence in how trees are planted in this area, because she really knows what she's doing from a variety of perspectives, from a holistic perspective, which I think is important. She's also got a degree in wildlife and conservation, so she's just got such a well-rounded picture of what is needed in these difficult times, and you know, she's really hands-on, and I've enjoyed learning things from her up to now. I'm looking forward to future projects. So Nicola, tell me more about what you did for your education, because it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Especially your PhD.
Great, yeah. Well, yeah, as you said, so I did a degree in wildlife conservation because I've always had a passion for wildlife and learning more about them. But yeah, my PhD involved looking at the ecosystem services that urban green spaces and particularly trees provide us. So I looked at measuring the regulating, supporting, provisioning services. So they're more the environmental stuff. So how much carbon do trees capture and store? How much rainfall do they intercept to prevent flooding? How do they, how much air pollution do they filtrate? Those are the sort of things that can be quantified. The other aspect, I did include cultural services. So that range from recreational benefits to, as you've said, spiritual. Now, as you know, we've talked about it before, with any social benefits, it's very hard to quantify, so it's qualitative data. So there was a real task there to work with both quantitative and qualitative data, but it was really important, and I think it still is important to make sure the cultural services are talked about. So anytime we discuss the value of trees or how they should be managed, we need to talk about the social value as well as the environmental, even though it's not easy because it's subjective, everyone feels differently. So even though you can't quantify it, we need to throw it in there with the conversation. And I feel that that's been more prominent, hasn't it, in recent times with the lockdowns. We've all gained a new perspective, haven't we, in terms of health and well-being, access to nature, what it does and how important it is. So I'm really pleased because I did this research going back a few years ago now at Salford, but now I'm able to sort of start to apply that into my current role at Wirral.
There was a study done in two areas were matched. One had trees in it and one didn't, and they found that the cortisol in the sweat in your palms was lower in people who were in the trees area. Mm-hmm. So I think even our physiological systems can be a response.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And as you said, we might not even be aware of it, but yeah, like you said, there's been many studies on health, and there's been studies that show that patients in hospitals that had a view of trees or of a green space recovered a lot faster than those that don't.
What is it about trees that we find so healing and relaxing?
Well, I mean, as I said, that's subjective. We're all different, aren't we? So
but as Blake said, Blake's famous quote about trees, basically, to paraphrase him, he said that some people just see a tree as a green thing in the way, and other people see this, as you and I do, this like really complex, interesting spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it is that, like, even in Blake's time, the same issue was coming up as it is now? What is it? What makes some people more like wanting to conserve or plant trees, and other people not as interested?
I don't know. I mean, trees are a very emotive subject. You know, I have found that people tend to either love trees, and as you said, you find those that don't like them, that find them a nuisance, and it does. You know, you're obviously aware. You know, street trees, for example, for some people can be a nuisance. You know, they don't like the leaf litter that then blocks up the drains, or the roots that disturb the paving. And
I'd say that was bad
management
of trees.
It is. I mean, that's. We'll talk about the tree strategy later on, but we do want to invoke this ethos now, which is right tree, right place. So we have to give thought to where the tree, what type of trees, size, species is going there, so that we can, because we should always be planting a tree now with the view that that's a permanent feature. We want that to then live its whole life in that location. So you're right, so we have to get the design right. We have to make sure that we minimise these
because obviously people have been a bit gung-ho, and they haven't had a consultant like you, because in Earth Moves I always ask experts, because as you say, you could be introducing something into this ecosystem that's going to be around for hundreds plus years, and that's going to have an effect. So you've got to be careful, and you've got to sometimes embrace the fact that you don't know and need to ask someone, because obviously some tree planting hasn't been what I would do if I had the power to make them choices. Monocultures have been used for carbon offsetting, and obviously monocultures don't generate an ecosystem. Some trees prevent other things from growing around them, and some people haven't had any training. They're just planting little saplings and forgetting about them, and then they die. I'm really glad that the council now has a strategy like this that is looking at these issues and addressing them. Can you tell me some methods? I mean, I know you have really put yourself out there, and you're there for people to ask advice to, and I think having all councils should have someone like you who has got a proven track record, because this is really, really important, and it's important that the right things are planted. Am I right in saying that you for me, you seem to be very open to people asking for advice?
Yeah, definitely. So we have some information now on the council website about if you want to plant a tree, what sort of considerations you should give to that. But again, my email address is on there, and at some point my aspiration is to produce a design guide of sorts that the community can refer to look out for advice on how to plant trees, and what they should think about when they select in the type of tree and where it's going, and what to do. I mean, and we've talked about this as well. I just want to point out is not. I don't want to put people off from planting trees.
No.
It is. We've got to give thought to it, and it's not that hard. It's just that there's some considerations you need to make. But it is. It's a wonderful thing to be able to plant a tree and then watch it grow.
So am I right in saying that one of your roles is that you do go out to communities and give this type of advice and sharing skills? And stuff?
Absolutely. As well as the tree, woodland and hedgerow strategy, within that strategy, I should say that we have a commitment to increase community engagement. So off the back of that, we have now created an engagement policy which sets out the council's commitment now into engagement and the forms of engagement that we'll use in over the next 10 years, which is the length of the strategy. So yes, we really want to encourage communities to come to us. We're happy. We want to support, offer advice.
To be honest, the advice you've given us has been really good, and not just that, you're so approachable and nice and so into community that I felt it's been very easy to communicate to you what Earth Moves does and things like that. And I think I told you before, I don't always feel like that with other people who are a bit snobby and a bit like pompous and a bit like, as you said before, kind of like making it this big difficult thing, making you think that, oh, I won't be able to do that, I need to go to horticulture college for 3 years or something, when really it's just digging a hole, isn't it? And putting compost, you know what I mean? It's not, people with learning difficulties can be involved in these projects. You don't have to be like, you who's an expert. Yes, you be around to give guidance, but once you've done that, people can go and it can spiral off this.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's what we're hoping for. So when we run these events, we've got a few lined up for the winter. You said the one we have here, we've not got a date yet, but we're hoping next month, aren't we? We want anyone to come along. And we'll have the tools. We're going to talk to each other, show each other how it's done, and I'm hoping from that, as the more events that we have, people go away and be inspired then to maybe approach us about their own projects that they want to do.
I was really fascinated that you explained, which, as a feminist and things like that, I just love the fact that your study was like, it had spiritual aspects about trees and tree lore, and I'm really fascinated. I only know a tiny bit about a couple of trees that are here actually that have kind of inspired me to go and read about them, but I'd love you to tell me more about that, because that just sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, trees in so many cultures, religions, mythology, folklore are worthy of spiritual respect. There's so many different stories out there, and I don't know about you, but I find it, we'll never know it all because there are so many different folklores and mythologies, but every time you learn something new about a tree, I look at the tree differently. I find it endearing to me, to consider the tree and its story behind it. So I was thinking about this when I knew we were having a chat, and I thought, what we could talk about. Well, we should probably talk about maybe in the beginning. So there are mythologies across the world that believe that the first man on Earth was created from the ash tree.
No.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And in Norse mythology, it's believed that the first woman on Earth came from the elm. Now there are some, so in sort of Irish Celtic folklore, they believe it's a rowan. But if we go back to what the Vikings believed, that it was elm was where the woman came from. I think it's fascinating that in our lifetime at the moment, the two tree species that are sort of fighting for their survival at the moment are the ash, because the ash dieback, and elm because of Dutch elm disease. And I think it's that poignant that if we have derived from these two tree species, that we're going through the same battle at the moment, aren't we, with
really
this
sad.
climate and climate and environmental emergency. We're also, in a way, humanity's fighting for survival at the moment, isn't it? And so is that, there's a connection there. But anyway, so moving from that, we don't want to talk about somber subjects, but
that's what it is. What it is.
And a lot of trees
that's
are
what's
associated with it.
Yeah.
But we should mention oak, because oak in so many ancient and modern meaning and cultures for the time being. So it was sacred for the Greeks. Roman emperors were presented with the crowns of oak leaves. The Druids worshipped oak, and my favourite is in Celtic folklore. The oak was considered to be the gateway between worlds, and I love that, because if you could picture a tree as being the gateway to another world, wouldn't it be an ancient oak? It would, wouldn't it?
Wow, yes, it would. They are very magical, and of course, in a lot of shamanic lore, trees are a way to transverse the shamanic realms, like going inside of a tree to go into the underworld and then the higher planes as well.
Yeah.
So so I understand about that as well, like trees and shamanism are kind of linked. So do you think that if people knew more about like these mythologies, would that give them a more intimate relationship with the trees?
I think it would. I mean, everyone's different, aren't they? I know it does for me, and I'm sure it probably does for you as well. You know, for example, there's another sound, elder. Now, elder's not really sort of well regarded in sort of in a tree aspect.
I love them.
Yeah, so you know, we're going to plant them as part of our edible hedgerow, but elder actually has a lot of associations with enchantment and magic.
Yeah.
And it was thought that witches could turn themselves into elder, you know, if they were trying to escape, you know, persecution. And I love looking at an elder thinking, there could be a spirit hiding in there.
I love you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, and equally that, you know, the flowers, they're so good for, you know, we can make them into cordial wine, and it's good for treating things like flu, cold, hay fever, isn't it?
And the berries are very, which is good in these times of worries about contagion, viruses and that. The berries are very high in antiviral compounds.
They have, haven't they? They've got a lot of vitamin C and D in them, haven't they? So yeah. And again, you know, down the sort of line, the magical line. So elderwood was thought to be the best wood if you're making a wand. So any Harry Potter fans probably know that already, because you know, the wands out of elder were the best. And it was thought that witches could, if they stirred an elder stick in water, they could summon a storm. You know, there's that sort of So, and it's thought that if you use an elder stick for walking, you won't get lost if you're going on a hike. Or
I need one of them.
My head. So
can we just go back to what you said there, which I didn't know, because when I was little, we had an elder tree in the garden, and me and my brother used to sit and we used to call it the cave because the branches went over the fence like that. We used to sit in it. So elders always been in my consciousness from forever, and I've got one in my own garden, but I thought everybody loved them. I didn't realise that some people don't like them till now.
Yes, no, and I think
what's there not to like them?
I don't know. I think maybe it's its size, its stature. It's not, you know, even mature elders and often take it, you know, and they're quite, you know, they're quite hardy, and they're very good at self-seeding, so we find them, they crop up everywhere. So I think people have a view that they're more of a weed than something we plant. I mean, I totally disagree because I like them, but I'm just saying that that's an example where perhaps if people knew a bit more about the folklore, you know, maybe they would endear them more towards it, don't know.
I think, well, not everybody's romantic, are they? So obviously what we're talking about now maybe, you know, goes back a long way, and there's always been a frustration with those who, you know, don't see the spirit of trees. Carlos Castaneda, I remember, said about trees that they were the apex of like consciousness in plants, like we are in the animals. You know, they've got the most intense sort of consciousness. But he reckoned that Don Juan, the shaman in it, had communicated with them, and they'd said they were very disappointed with people because of the way we were behaving. They were like sad at what we do. When I look at you, I can just really see the forest in you. I can really sense that magical presence, that you have really communed and really understood trees. What do you think for you? I know you're a scientist and things like that as well, which I also love. I love objectivity and I love the empirical nature of science. But I also love the things that come, you know, from the spirit. You know, I mean, from the senses that we don't, that aren't the five senses. If you know what I mean. So, what messages do you think the trees are saying? What you felt?
I don't know really, because it's like with a lot of nature. It does change my mood. I know if I, you know, you see a tree, you know, maybe it's a tree that comes into blossom, and it cheers my spirit up when I see it, you know, and I notice it, and I think, you know, and as time changes, so the colours in autumn now, you know, I'll spot a tree, and I don't know, I guess yeah, I guess it's just the appreciation of them. So I just have that.
I just feel like the spirit is in you and your eyes, because your eyes are like a gorgeous hazel. It reminds me of the forest.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. There's forest bathing, isn't there? Just like a new kind of faddy thing people do. But there's no need to put like all these labels and complexity onto things. Just go into the forest, just sit by a tree, plant one.
Yeah, no, it's as individuals, it's how you feel, and you feel different things as you walk through woodland. I did read recently that birch supposedly does help emotions of calmness and could perhaps be good for anyone suffering with depression. Now, whether that's just because of the colour of the bark, it's white, so in any landscape, it's a white light in a darkness. But isn't that wonderful to think that if someone is feeling a bit, not in themselves, feeling a bit down, they could look at a birch and then, But then I'm quite, maybe it's romantic, but then the birch is also known as the lady of the woods, and I look at a birch and think that despite that it appears to be quite fragile and delicate, it's incredibly hardy, So I like that. So it's the lady of the woods, quite tough, really.
Good.
So I know a lot of trees with white blossoms do have association with fairies. And,
do they?
Yeah, and particularly I've heard that rowan, if you meditate near rowan, it can enhance psychic powers and visions. Now I don't have any, but I wouldn't know to test that out. But so yeah, rowan. Yeah, and I think it comes down to the appreciation, though. Anything that makes people appreciate trees more, regardless of what it is. You say not everyone will perhaps believe in the mythology or the folklore, but there may be some other reason, and it may be that because they see waxwings appear and forage on a particular tree, so they're very fond of it, or the colour of it, and whatever. And as you said, it's one of the things that I want to do. As our community, as part of our community action plan, is to sort of have some form of maybe it's not campaign's not the right word, but I want to gather stories. I want people to say what is their favourite tree and why, and get those messages, so that look at trees differently. And you might pass a tree in the street and that's.
Have you got a favourite tree?
I've got a few favourite types of tree in terms of actual trees. There is an oak tree on next to my parents' house. That's one that I've always.
Is that one of your best friends?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Knows all your secrets.
Yeah. It's just always been so prominent there. It's a symbol for me of stability and
yeah.
But types of trees. So rowan is one of my favourite types. I love bees, so Indian bean tree is very good for bees. They love feeding on that. And then the other one is a tulip tree.
What's that?
That's
is that from our country?
Yeah, it is, and it has the leaf. The shape of the leaf is like a tulip flower.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so you may have not seen one, but I just remember seeing. It was while I was doing my PhD, the first one that I'd seen in my lifetime, and I just saw the leaf.
Is that quite rare? Is that a rare tree?
Believe it or not, they're not as rare. They're not a common, so you won't see them all the time. But there often is one in a local park.
I've done some nature meditation around trees and touching them, and you never know in these altered states of consciousness whether it's just a big fantasy that you're just making up, or it actually is something that you're communicating with. But I've always felt like so much love from them, like love and strength. Trees have like a special sort of like intensity. But the great thing about trees too is that they're beautiful, and they're kind to our eyes. They make us feel uplifted. But they're also creating habitats and helping with flooding as well, which is an issue here. I think you're right, that feeling of appreciation makes me want to plant them more and stuff like that.
I think we have taken them for granted, for a long time, and it's often when a tree, if a tree is removed, sometimes you find that people then have a reaction to it because they perhaps didn't realise what that did to the landscape and how it made them feel, and as soon as it's taken away,
it's like a friend's gone.
So I think but if we can sort of ensure the importance of trees is celebrated, then you know, we can help protect them, can't we, for longer? So
and a diverse forest is the best way. You know, obviously a rewilded forest that just naturally occurs, but is the time for that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, we do need to consider, you know, resilience. So we do need to, you know, the effects of climate change. So as you said, yeah, in terms of you know, our rewilded areas and our woodlands, then you know, we need to think about the natives. But in our urban environments, I think there is scope to look at
in permaculture,
ornamental species that are going to survive with the conditions, because they are different, you know, with pollution and
in permaculture, there's a principle of forest gardens. So trees, they're usually productive in some way, like willow for making stuff, fruit trees, nut trees. So in the garden here, we're kind of experimenting with you know, mini versions of that and seeing how that goes. But you know, not that I'm like a great expert in gardening or anything like that. That's why I surround myself with people who are, so they can help with the decisions. And obviously people in the community have their own wants and needs. Like someone wants to create a little rose garden, which would be lovely. I'm going to get heritage ones because the mum died when they were young, and she loved roses and stuff. So
again, that comes back down to what I did for my PhD, which was mapping how ecosystem services change with management. So as we look at, you know, future scenarios, because we've got climate and social economic pressures, but what will that do with the services if under different management? And the thing about the spiritual benefits is that people found that, you know, from the surveys that I did, that people had more positive emotions, relaxation in naturalistic settings. So when you look at the management scenario, well, we could come a point where we have to do more food production in our green spaces. But if we go down the traditional route, you know, all about the yields and everything's you know, managed, there's maybe application of herbicide, pesticides, then we're going to affect those spiritual benefits that perhaps going to, you know,
you
reduce.
are just amazing. And a yield, what is a yield anyway? A yield might be a physical yield, but it could be a social yield, a mental health yield.
Well, that's why what you're doing here at Telegraph Lane is so important, because you're looking at finding a way of producing the food, but keeping that spiritual benefits at the right level. So it's a balance, isn't it?
Say if we've ticked the balance and there's nothing we can do, climate change is coming, you know, it's going to be Armageddon. Well then, if that is the case, and no one really knows for sure, let's enjoy this moment now. And how can we enjoy this moment? By connecting with plants who, as you have stressed, and I know because I've seen plenty of studies as well, you know, it's absolutely an empirical fact that being in nature, being around plants, makes us feel better. Treating each other with more respect as well, and using structures like community gardens to look at authentic connection, mutual respect, mutual aid. And then the other one is what plants do, you know, particularly trees, for our eyes, because like when they're all when a cherry blossoms in bloom, it's just gorgeous. I think an elderflower as well. I think when an elder's in bloom, it's stunning. And people who don't like them have just got bad taste. Because they are absolutely gorgeous. I think they all. I can't really think of a tree that I don't like. Can you?
No, I don't know of a tree that I dislike. As you said, it comes down to where it is. So I know, you know, sometimes the large poplars cause issues. You know, when a lot of them are planted.
People need to be realistic about this, because some people are like chaining themselves to trees, and maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But I think we have to pick our fights carefully. Because, you know, trees can pull up the foundations of a house or something.
Yes, or that, you know, they are, you know, if they do have any pests or diseases, and they're in an area where, you know, there's lots of people walking or you know, nearby, we do need to be you know, managed correctly.
And by someone like you, who's, you know, I've said it a few times now, but I'm going to say it again, you have got such a holistic understanding of trees that I think the council is so lucky to have you. We're all in the communities involved in environmentalism lucky to have you involved. I am really looking forward to our tree planting project because hedge planting project because Pete and I have been dreaming about that for a while, and when you emailed me with that suggestion, I was like, what? That's like exactly what we'd love to do, because people can go by, they can have some berries, they can have the joy of foraging safely because all things that you've chosen are edible and will grow well. And then the birds and God knows what there might be things happen due to that we couldn't predict now. You know, that we ever think, God, you know, the bat population's exploded. You know, we just don't know. No. But it's all going to be positive.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it may also have an impact on the flooding as well.
Yes, yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
So tell us about the council's tree strategy. What are you guys working on right now?
Okay, so the council approved a new tree, woodland and hedgerow strategy last year. It's for the next 10 years, so you know will be revised. You know, when it comes to 2030. The strategy sets out how the principles of how existing trees will be managed within the council stock and protected. You know, it goes into you know trees and development as well. But two really important aspects from my point of view, because that's what my role is mainly about, is a commitment to plant 210,000 trees by 2030. So that's 21,000 trees a year. And the purpose of that is to double Wirral's tree canopy, and the reason for that number being so high is so that we can counteract potential loss because of ash dieback. We're aware that we're going to lose some of our tree stock because of that, so we want to make sure we're putting back in more than we lose. And the other thing in the trustee, which is key to yourselves, is a commitment to increase community engagement when it comes to all things relating to our trees, woodlands and hedgerows. So as I've mentioned, we've produced this policy, and now the next step is to work with groups such as yourselves to come up with an action plan, a community action plan of what we want to do. So as part of that, we'll have our planting programme, which, as you know, is already in development for this coming season. But we want to identify what communities want to do in terms of campaigns that we can run together, and equally some citizen science projects. So in terms of the campaign, from initial discussions with communities, we're probably looking at in the first year is a watering campaign. So our street trees, you know, the council planted a lot of street trees last year, and it's whether if someone lives near you know, a new tree can it help, you know.
I would definitely do that if I got a leaflet. I'd be like, yeah, I will do that.
Exactly. So that's what we want, to help the community to spread the word, as you said, distribute leaflets, information. The other thing, as I said, is not perhaps a campaign, but I want to find a way of being able to gather people's anecdotes and stories about trees, so you know we can appreciate.
So will you guys design a website then around trees and people's personal stories?
That's how I see it being. That would be nice, and you know people could share pictures of the trees or themselves and why, so we can look at it differently. Yes, and in terms of the citizen science, so next year the council we are going to work with Forest Research to measure these services that trees provide. So again, going back to what we talked about earlier, so we'll look at how much carbon is captured and stored, you know, how much pollution is filtered, and so we want volunteers to help us collect that data. So that will mean going across, and it's not just council stock, this is all trees, going out there and collecting the data.
Nerd alert.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And there will be, we do want, I've talked to Forest Research, we do want a social aspect, but that's going to take some time and thought to come up with how we capture the social value of trees as well as the environmental.
I think I'd like to see on that website, you know, your findings, and also some of the information you shared earlier on in the conversation about the folklore of trees, because that I've already learned loads from you. We've met a few times now, and you know I keep learning new things from you all the time, and I love the way you do it in a really unpreachy like nice way. You know, you're really good at passing on this information, and Earthmuse really support the work, and anything we can do to help you with your goals, we will. I just want to say thank you so much for this beautiful time, immersing in trees, thinking about trees. I certainly will be researching some of the things that you've said, finding out more information, and I'm really looking forward to working with you and learning more from you when we do our hedge planting project.
Yeah, likewise, yeah, can't wait for that, it's going to be
So
really good.
I'll put Nicola's details and email in the description, so if anyone wants to contact Nicola for any advice if you live in the Wirral, she'd be really happy to help you. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!